You're listening
to the CD Baby
DIY
Musician
Podcast.
Hey there, and welcome to episode number 74 of the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. My name is Kevin, and joining me for this Roundtable edition is Chris and our formerly Robert, now Bolton. Hey guys, how you doing?
He went through the change.
He did. just in case someone missed last episode and they're confused.
I'm just going by my last name. It's Bolton because my real name's not Robert.
Yeah, well,
I celebrate your entire catalog.
that's right. And we actually have a phone call about that later on. So.
Oh, excellent.
So how you guys been?
Good. I just devoured 3 tacos.
Yeah, so halfway through this podcast, I'm going to look over and your head's going to be over your sleeve.
Just a tuna sandwich over here. But doing well. I had a little dry spell of music. We couldn't get practice together, 8 people. And sometimes it's hard to get all your ducks in a row. But now we're talking about maybe doing 2 practices a week, which I don't know how in the world we're going to amp it up from going like a dry spell of a month without practice.
You know, you can always do sectionals too.
That's right.
Yeah, we should probably start doing that. I was thinking about doing like a vocal practice because we got like 5 people singing. So.
Wow, it's like a choir.
I know.
Well, my band, Hello Morning, we have been mixing our album this week. It's actually being mastered today. So
Fun.
That's been quite a process. And I think after this, I'm thinking about having like some sort of like psychologist or somebody that can come on the show and talk about dealing with personal dynamics. Not that we had anything difficult, but it's just, you know, you're under time crunch and, you know, trying to get people to communicate what they really want to say. And
was it anything like that documentary on Metallica?
I haven't seen that yet, but I'm going to say no. No, it was nothing. It was nothing with our band. It was just, you know, you're under the gun and you're dealing with the mixing engineer and trying to communicate with him and trying to communicate with your guys and trying to, you know, make sure everyone's voice is heard, but at the same time making sure it's understood by the person who needs to, you know, tweak the knobs. And so it's just kind of an interesting process.
I'm actually producing a band now that is recording their album with the person who mixed your album.
Ah, yes.
Oh.
How sweet.
Your chocolates and my peanut butter.
Gross.
So hopefully we'll have some music online soon. People can check out. Speaking of music, just wanted to remind everybody the holidays are coming up. If you have any hopes or aspirations of having new music up for the Christmas season, get it up now, please.
Yeah, every year at CD Baby, you know, the week after Thanksgiving, people will be like, I need to get it on iTunes now.
I remember one year somebody called and it was like December 22nd and wanted it on iTunes by Christmas.
Yeah.
And they're like, if I sign it up today, we'll be on iTunes.
People have stopped buying Christmas music.
Yeah. People
point.
buy Christmas albums like a month before Christmas so they can have something to listen to.
Yeah, and that actually is, especially for like the mail order business. I mean, downloads people will be buying all through the season, but our big spike in sales actually happens right after Thanksgiving for a couple weeks, and then starts the week before, starts to taper off as people realize, you know, shipping a present is going to be an overnight deal. So that being said, get your music signed up. If you've got something you need signed up, do that now, and you'll make us happy. So
before we jump into the news section, can I play you guys my new Host Baby commercial?
Sure. Do you have it in your pocket there or something?
Actually, no, I don't want to hear it. Sorry.
No, post-editing. I'll throw it in.
Okay.
Oh, all right, yeah.
Build a professional website without knowing a lick of HTML. The Host Baby Wizard is a powerful, easy-to-use site building tool. Whether you're building your first site or ready for a new one, the Wizard is perfect for creating a powerful, dynamic, and professional website in minutes. Type in your text Easily upload photos, audio, and video, and choose from hundreds of designs and colors. Type, click, and go. Host Baby's wizard includes a website branded using your own domain name, a gig calendar, easy drag and drop content management, a streaming music player, RSS feeds, photo gallery, newsletter feature, and many customizable templates and designs. Best of all, Host Baby offers phone support 7 days a week for musicians and artists just like you. Wizard accounts enjoy all these features for no additional charge. Try Host Baby free at hostbaby.com.
It was kind of snazzy, right?
Yes, it was. All right. Well, let's get into some news and some discussion about the past episode, and then later on your feedback, which we have a lot. So let's do it.
CD Baby. CD Baby. Music. News.
All right, here are the news items for this week. In 2008, the Council for Research Excellence, a research group funded by Nielsen, studied the media consumption habits of U.S. adults. Researchers followed about 300 people around for 2 days, using a handheld device to track every single 10-second interval of media that they consumed. The study was originally designed to track TV watching habits, but since they were tracking all media consumed by the test subjects, they also compiled stats for audio listening habits as well, which they released this past week. The results were surprising to some, as the most popular form of audio media was still traditional broadcast radio. In fact, it wasn't even close. About 77% of U.S. adults listened to some broadcast radio on any given day, much more than listened to a CD or tape, which was 37%. Satellite radio came in third with 15%, and about 12% of users listened to portable MP3 players on any given day. And about 10% listened to digital media files stored on a computer, and only 9% listened to streamed audio, including online radio. The study has tons of other data about age groups and time spent listening to each form of audio and so on. But an important point is that even digital music consumers still listen to the radio. Nearly 82% of people who listen to MP3 players on any given day also listen to radio. Major record label EMI Music recently announced the launch of Abbey Road Live, a live music recording and instant production service that will offer fans digital recordings of concerts at the conclusion of the show. Recordings will be sold at venues following the performance on CD, DVD, USB, or via secure digital delivery to home computers or mobile phones as streams or downloads. The service, which was originally established in 2004 as Live Here Now by EMI label Mute Records, will initially launch in North America and Europe. The operation has already produced recordings of performances from artists including Blur, Depeche Mode, Franz Ferdinand, and the Pixies. Finally, there's lots of talk about finding creative ways to bundle music, especially for direct-to-fan sales, whether that be at shows or through your artist website. Well, you might want to take a cue from Weezer, who, believe it or not, is bundling their new album Ratitude with a Weezer-branded Snuggie. Yes, the Snuggie, that hideous oversized blanket meets bathrobe that most likely mesmerized you with their awkward TV ads showing frustrated blanket users finding comfort in their garment, which to me is reminiscent of a bad sci-fi movie. It seems to be a perfect match for Weezer, who is known for their quirky personality, and I expect they will sell a lot. So the lesson here, the perfect bundling to help complete the package and sell your music, may not be music related at all.
That would be awesome if people showed up to a Weezer show in those.
I'm sure they will.
I'm sure.
Today I noticed they had a special zebra print Snuggie, only available to Weezer fans.
With a big W on it?
No, it says Weezer right across the top. And if you go online, they even made a TV commercial using, I'm sure with the Snuggie folks, and it uses a lot of the footage from the regular Snuggie ads, but then puts them in. And
that's so clever. And
they even reshot some of the other Snuggie scenes with the original actors wearing the Weezer version and recreated the scenes and stuff. It's pretty funny.
Clever marketing.
Unrelated to the news, but Weezer also did a recent performance with Kenny G, which you can see online.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty good actually.
But the Weezer Snuggie comes with the album. So it's like you go to their Weezer.com and the first thing you come to is like a page that kind of looks like a store, and and you buy the Snuggie and the album. So for $29.99, you get a Snuggie and the album, or you can just get the album for $15.
You know, I never would have thought one of those Snuggies would be cool, but I think if it says Weezer on it, it might be.
It just might be. We'll let you test market that one out. If I see you walking around the office wearing a Snuggie, and we'll know. But yeah, I thought it was just an interesting combination of, this band that's known for their quirkiness and that commercial that just instantly became like a cultural phenomenon. Everyone was just like talking about the Snuggie. And in fact, I think it was Tim Seeley, who listens to the podcast, and his band was on an early episode being interviewed, Moving Rushmore. One time he tweeted that I think it was him, if it wasn't him, it was Patrick, the lead singer, tweeted that he was at a restaurant and the whole family, like some people were there wearing Snuggies.
Oh, really?
Snuggie Army.
Wow. See, it's really interesting to watch bands pick up on those sort of cultural phenomena, those things you might call viral. If you remember back this far, the Foo Fighters did a whole play on the Mentos.
Oh, right, for that video.
Yeah, for their video, because those Mentos ads were just all over the place, and people couldn't tell if they were tongue-in-cheek or not.
Or because they were a European, I think they're Swedish, or I forget what they're made. They're not from the U.S., so sometimes humor is different in different cultures. Yeah, and it depends on the kind of band you are. I mean, if you're like a serious singer-songwriter, I don't think bundling your album with the Snuggie is going to do well for you, but might cause more confusion.
Yeah.
But I
Weezer's
think,
known for that sort of tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, but I just thought it was a good example of them using something that people are already talking about, bundling their music with it and branding it themselves, and it kind of working all together. It wasn't, just like some random thing.
Right.
The other news item I thought mention is like that report about radio consumption.
That really surprised me.
Well, I do have to say, because there's a bigger, article and report that goes along with it. It doesn't mean music listening. It just means it could be talk radio, it could be sports radio, it could be talk radio, and
just audio listening.
Yeah, so by traditional methods, because I would score really high on regular radio listening, but it's never music; it's all talk.
Right.
Well, I think the hard thing is, especially with things like streaming radio and podcasts and stuff like that, is that there isn't an easy way to flip on your favorite podcast, like when you're doing things around the house or when you're in your car. Like, it just hasn't quite gotten to that point where, because with podcasts or with, streaming music, you have a million different options, and you have to sort of find what you want to listen to and sort of dig in, and there's a little bit more activity involved than just flipping on your radio.
Yeah. So it would be interesting to see if they actually broke it down to audio as far as like music and talk, and sports and other things, and I have a feeling they didn't. But yeah, because it's easier to flip on a radio when you're doing something. But if I'm listening to music, it's always with my MP3 player or with the computer.
When I'm in the car, I have that auxiliary input, and I just put my iPod in and listen to a podcast or music that way.
Yeah. I can't stand listening to music on the radio. It's like I feel like I'm listening to commercials with radio interspersed.
Yeah. Obviously, I think having the choice and the availability of what's online is far superior quality-wise. It just takes a little bit more, I think, like investment as a listener. Obviously, the three of us are pretty invested as listeners. There's probably a lot of people who aren't all that critical about the content they're listening to.
And it's also more important for them to, if they're in the car, just get in the car and go where they're going and not worry, let me queue up my playlist.
Let me plug in my iPod, find the adapter, make sure it's charged.
Plus, I think breaking down regular radio station, I think it would be better to see it by, if even just music, but genre. Because like there's a great jazz station here in town that's broadcast out of a college, so they don't even have commercials.
Right.
So when you're listening to that, that's
and you're not going to hear the same
songs over and over. Yeah, it's totally programmed by the DJs like it used to be. Right. So yeah, I could see a lot more people gravitating towards that than I don't know. Obviously, broadcast radio is still doing just fine.
Yay.
Let's move on to recapping a little bit of last week's episode number 73, where I interviewed Josh Rosenthal. So what did you guys think?
I loved it. Thought it was a really good episode.
Sorry, I was taking a drink of water there.
Oh,
I agree. I thought it was one of the better episodes. He had a lot of great information.
yeah, and I'm glad it came out well because it was literally the 11th hour I needed an interview, and like I said, that one of our listeners, Steve, emailed saying, "Hey, you got to get this guy," and I checked it out. I'm like, "Yeah, this would be a good interview," and so
I really appreciated how strategic he was, and I don't mean that to sound like he's not artistic, but he integrates. It seems like he integrates his musical vision with his image as a performer and the album art and all that stuff, and tries to make it a cohesive presentation.
Right. All his goals and his business plan and how he made realistic goals for himself. I mean, how many musicians out there like, I want to be on MTV, which is like, sure, that's great. But like, he was like, I know I can do this. I know I can build 1,000 followers, people to come out to my show in these different demographics. I've done the research and it's possible. And I'm working towards that goal and it's going to happen in, 3 to 4 years. And he was slowly making it happen. And, yeah, it was great. I mean, obviously he had some background in marketing and was able to apply that, but I think it's such a good example. I mean, obviously, maybe not all of us are going to be as proactive as he is, but I think just listening to somebody who is being that proactive and has employed all these great techniques is really educational to the artist.
He seemed also pretty self-aware in the sense of he had a good knowledge of what was working for him and what wasn't, and it seemed like he was adjusting as he went. He said, I don't think posting all the time on Twitter is doing anything for me. So he's not going to waste his time there. He'll put that into, whatever is working.
yeah, and I thought that was a good contrast to a lot of the interviews we've had recently. We're really heavily focused on things like Twitter, like Allison Weiss interview. She, that's where most of her interaction happens. Where for him, he uses it, but it's not like a main thrust of his promotion efforts. And
also because he knew it wasn't big with his demographic. I think he said, it's mostly 30 and early 40-year-olds who probably aren't on Twitter all the time. So
yeah, I thought it was a really good interview, and especially for so many of our listeners who aren't in New York, LA, Nashville. I mean, even here in Portland, it's a big city, but the scene is not like some of those media centers where a lot of books and advice you see people writing for independent artists just won't work when you're not in those big media hubs. And especially I mean, how many people have heard of a band coming out of Salt Lake City, Utah? I know there are some,
right?
So you don't have to email, we know. But as far as like people don't get up and move there.
Right. One thing I was thinking, we mentioned Portland being a big city, but not a media center. But I think we have an opposite problem from his issue in Salt Lake, where there isn't a lot of. It sounded like you basically didn't have any competition. So if you're mildly good at what you're doing, you'll have a following. Portland, for not being a huge city, has like 10,000 bands at last count or something, and probably 2,000-3,000 singer-songwriters. So it's like, I don't know. It just amazed me to think, you could be in a city and not have any competition.
Saturated.
Yeah. Well, and there's the drawback to not having any competition is that there's not most likely a thriving scene. So, I mean, you're going to have to do some groundwork to, get something going. But I hear that from artists all the time. And that's why I liked the fact that he was in Salt Lake City. He's in, some of the smaller towns around there, and hitting a lot of those markets because, I've heard artists say all the time, well, there's no scene where I live. And they're probably right, but if they are really serious about it and they're good, they have a good opportunity in creating a scene, and it's going to take you thinking beyond just yourself.
Yeah.
You're going to have to think about the artist community and how can I get everyone excited about the artist community in our town.
Right.
And then you'll see that it'll kind of have a snowball effect and people will feel more motivated
You're going to have to think about who your audience is. If these are the people, or these are the 500 people I want to come out to my show, like, what are the chances that death metal is going to bring them out of their houses? You might have to adjust your artistic principles a little bit. If you can take your death metal online and there's a lot of places to conquer if you're in a small town, but you're not going to probably appeal to the local demographic in sort of a wide range, having a very specific genre of music. You're going to have to look a little bit more at those people and what you think they might enjoy as far as, bring people out to your shows.
I think the advantage, what he did is just like you're saying, Chris, was that he knew who his audience was and really went after them. Because even in a town of 200,000, which would be a small city, that's 200,000 people. There's got to be 500 people in that town that are probably interested in the music that you're doing.
Right.
And probably 100 people that would be very excited to really get on board and rally around an artist that's doing something interesting. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of really figuring out who you are, because I think that a lot of artists just start broadcasting to everybody and just assume that everybody is interested. And I don't know, that's the hard part, to really figure out how to find your group and get connected to them and really get them excited.
And I think that it's just so important too that like he went into an unsaturated market. And I think that just because you're in a saturated market doesn't mean you can't find an unsaturated aspect of the area that you live in. Is the more the unique, your product, the less competition you have. Mm-hmm. So I think that just because there's, 10,000 bands in Portland doesn't mean you can't be the first, band that plays underwater or whatever,
That sounds risky.
I was gonna say the quality about him that I really truly honestly respect, but it seems so foreign to me, is how he was able to say, these are the three things I always want my music to convey. I kind of this is my template, or that I'm gonna start from.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what they were exactly. It was like simplicity, wisdom, or something like that.
I forget,
but
simplicity was one of them.
Because to me, I have like creative ADD. Like if I feel like I've made an album that's kind of folk heavy, chances are the next one I'm gonna be like, I need to get some electronic like krautrock going on this one, and then I'll be sick of that and be like, I need to do a jazzy album. Like, just to keep myself interested, or even from song to song on one particular album. And for him to have this thing where it's...
well, maybe one of your three things is that you always have to mix it up.
Well, and when he was talking about that...
try to confuse people,
he was talking about branding himself as an artist. And I know that Lisa Lapine wants to come back on the podcast soon and talk about artist branding. And I think that what he was talking about would fall right in line with, I know, some of the things that she would cover. But... I know that it just was, for him, it was basically keeping everything consistent. So the music, he decided that that's what he wants his music to be, maybe just for this project. And the ongoing albums and music that come from this project as him as a solo artist, and also visually having some consistency. And I think Cell Dweller did a good job of that too. That was interview episode 69, I think, or 68. If you go back and listen to that, or if you haven't seen his albums, they all have a very consistent look. Mm-hmm. And it was just something that happened naturally, but he looked back and really realized that that's working. And I think that's kind of what Josh was talking about, kind of creating this consistent experience. So it kind of grows into a brand that's bigger than just, your music, that people kind of expect a certain flavor from all aspects of what they get from you. And then that starts to, I think, open up opportunities, where he was talking about how he was writing a book, where that flavor will go into that book and feel a part of the overall package as him as an artist, because it's all consistent. It's just not some random book about, some topic.
Right.
It all fits together. And I think that's where, somebody, if you're really trying to develop, some serious income streams from your music, you're going to have to consider at some point, at some degree. You may not have to take it to the level that he does, but, some point you're going to have to consider that. I mean, I remember with Small Town Poets, we'd be writing a song and be like, this idea really isn't a Small Town Poets song, It's
cool, you like it, but
it doesn't fit
right.
with what the brand of Small Town Poets is. So
I love I loved his iTunes idea.
That was a good one. And literally when I was reading on his website, how did he do that? I mean,
Yeah.
I work for CD Baby. I don't know how to do that at iTunes.
How do you give away free tax?
And then he just gift them. I'm like, oh, duh. I mean, anyone can do
It's
it.
true. He bought them himself, and then he gets some of the money back, so he's only paying about 30 cents.
Yeah.
Per track that he gives away. I thought that was genius.
So
Yeah.
that would have cost him what, like $30 or something? No.
He gave away 300
$90?
tracks. Yeah, so around $90. But, not bad. If it
promo
worked,
effort, yeah.
and a lot of people using iTunes, so it made it seamless for them. He just gifted it to them, and it went right into their
Yeah,
account.
if anyone else decides to try that, let us know.
Yeah, and we'll be on your gift list. The one last thing before I get to we had a comment about this that I wanted to read, but before we get to that, the last thing I really liked what he said was about surrounding yourself with people that believe in what you're doing. That was kind of his final, word of advice. And I think that's very true. And I think that goes back to why so many artists are concerned about getting a record deal. And in my case, it was true that was kind of like the stamp of approval to get people on board to believe in you as an artist. Mm-hmm. And, so I think it's really important that you surround yourself with people that are encouraging and do see, your kind of artistic vision so you can move forward with confidence and not always be second guessing yourself.
I think I took that point for granted in a way because to me that's always been essential out of like self-preservation. Like if I wasn't, I've been very lucky to be surrounded by people who help me make my music and are supportive and whatnot. But if I wasn't, it just seems like it would be the logical thing to do, to disassociate yourself from that negativity. And
I've just never met anyone who didn't think I was the cat's meow.
Well, having majored in music in college, and I mentioned on the podcast, I had my parents were supportive and stuff, but I had relatives who were like, "What do you want to throw away your life for?" And they'd probably say, "Yep, he's thrown away his life." But and being there with a bunch of other music majors, you could see that going on in their lives too. I mean, for me, it was not. I mean, this wasn't somebody who really had any influence on my life that said that, but you could see that influence in a lot of people. And when you get out on the road touring professionally, I mean, it's tough, and there's a lot of hard days where you're like, what am I doing? And if you have all these people telling you the same thing, you're going to give up. But if you have people that understand that you have talent and that you need to use it, then it makes it easier to keep going.
it's always amusing to get that question, like, so how long are you going to give this music thing? And I'm like, wait, I have a job. I'm not starving. I work at CD Baby. I can make music for the rest of my life.
That's right. And you should.
Yes.
Well, we have a comment. Maybe he needs his own section of the podcast now that he's...
Robert?
Yes, now that he's gaining a fan base. Robert Lee King posted a comment, as he usually does, but at cdbabypodcast.com, where you can post your comments as well. But I'm only going to read a part of it. It was a lengthy comment, but this is the first quarter section of it. So here goes. He said, not sure how things are in Colorado, Utah, Idaho, and Texas, but in California, I can tell you what Josh is hoping to do in his locale is impossible here. 500 people paying $10 to $15 to see a folk Americana act. Here, it's a miracle to get 50 people to pay $5 to see 3 popular indie bands on any given night. Think about that. 50 people on a good night spend $5 each, or $250 to be divided amongst 3 bands each with a minimum of 4 members. In most cases, the venue pays the bands nothing beyond the door, so each band member makes $20 for that show. Many drove 40-plus miles to get to the show in 2 or more vehicles. In short, they lose money playing the show.
Yeah, that's
LA.
That's how it goes.
He's from LA, right?
I'm not sure if he's from LA. I don't think he's from LA.
It
I'm
just
sure
seems
he'll
like-
let us know.
It seems like
I've never charged more than like $5 to $8 for a show that I played at.
But to me, it's an example of why quantity sometimes destroys the importance of an event. Like, you're going to pay a little bit of money to see 4 bands over the course of 3 or 4 hours at this bar, and the bands are shuffled on and off stage quickly, and they don't really get a chance to like settle in and do their thing because they really are just like in and out, Whereas like if you pay a little bit more money and you see one act and you sit down for an hour and a half. It's like sometimes less can be a lot more in that way.
Yeah, I agree. Because with like some of the shows we're booking coming up, it's like, there's some great bands on the bill, and each of us are only playing 40 minutes to 45 minutes. And it's like, well, for a big artist or somebody who's really got something going, you're just kind of just getting the crowd, wrapped around your finger at that point, where it's like, another half hour and you've put on a real show, So it is kind of a weird thing. But also what Josh was doing that he mentioned is that he was playing in places that weren't clubs, places where he could just get the room, and I've done this before. You can rent some halls and rooms at sometimes like $100. And like Grange halls, or
he mentioned churches.
Churches, colleges. I mean, a lot of places where there's just a good room. There's more places like that in towns than you realize. They just get neglected because they're not regular venues.
Armories.
Yeah, armories. Yeah, those are pretty popular up here. But yeah, you rent one of those out, and a lot of times it's cheaper than you think, and you get $10 at the door. $10 isn't too much for a good show. And you pack it out, that's a couple $1,000s.
The one thing I was curious about in those events, I don't know if you handled this, but if there's alcohol, how do you have it catered, or do you provide it yourself?
Makes it, well, true. The time I did it, there wasn't alcohol. And that makes it trickier because I believe the venue has to have a liquor license to begin with.
Because, I know my fans can't enjoy music unless there's alcohol, so...
It grates on them too much. Yeah. It's like, hey, Chris, let me get a few beers in me before you start playing.
Yeah. I can't even do a podcast unless I'm flying.
Woo! You're not going to go changing your name on us again, are you?
Just call me Snoopy.
So, yeah, it is different in different cities. If you're in LA, yeah, I don't know. It's challenging. But... you just can't assume that's the case. You got to try stuff. You're going to try stuff and fail. I'm sure Josh had tried stuff and failed, but he didn't come on the podcast to talk about all his failures.
Sometime we should do a podcast with a really famous person and only let them talk about everything they did incorrectly.
Oh, yeah, just catharsis.
Yep. Never let them say anything self-congratulatory or no success stories.
And I'll just, tell them, you were so stupid. How could you be so dumb? All right. Well, thanks, Robert, for that comment. And if you'd like to leave a comment, like I mentioned, you can do so in the comment section at cdbabypodcast.com. And always some interesting feedback there. And speaking of feedback, we have your phone calls and an email. So let's get to it.
CD Baby Podcast.
Message line
206-426-5683.
The number you have dialed.
206-426-5683.
Hey, what up? It's Zero from The Legend of Zero, and I am pretty cool, yeah. You guys are pretty cool, especially the services and what you guys did for the album that I put out on there. It's called The Zero for Hire Presents. It's like a Christian rap compilation. But that's not what I called about. Well, the reason I called is because there was a young lady on the last podcast that wanted to know about getting band together and some stuff like that. And what I could do to help as far as advice is what worked for me. Back in the day, I used to be in a band. It was just some guys that sucked me into it. And over the course of time, bands fall apart and that stuff just doesn't work. Well, there was one situation where we lost our drummer because he got in a car accident. And we needed a drummer to finish the rest of the shows, and we couldn't find anybody that wanted to play that kind of music. So I ended up getting a program called Fruity Loops. It's an audio program, and that was the beginning of production for me. So programming the drums, I know it sounded kind of weird because people were definitely confused seeing a band with programmed drums in the back, but that enabled us to do strings and samples and all other kind of stuff that the drummer we couldn't get him to play on time in the first place. So why does it matter? The reason I'm bringing it up is you can either get Fruity Loops or you can find a local producer on like SoundClick.com, MySpace.com. There's plenty of local producers in your area, I'm sure, that would love to help you put together some cheesy formats of, just get an outline or a skeleton of what you want to do. Don't underestimate the power of the local producers, because if I had never got that program to make up those few shows, I never would be doing the music that I'm doing today. And I tell you, it's cool to be able to go on stage, not have to set up a bunch of crap, just rip your set and do a great job and have people feel what you're doing, and then, go back to enjoying your life instead of having to haul around all this equipment and stuff. And it was all because of the local producers in my area teaching me how to do that. So if you know somebody who can get you plugged in, SoundClick.com is a great place to start. You can also check it out on Craigslist. I'm sure I've taken up enough of your time, but thanks a lot. Love you guys. Peace.
Hey there, Kevin and everyone else. This is Matthew Ebel from MatthewEbel.com and MatthewEbel.net. I'm sitting here making myself some coffee, and I am listening to episode number 72, the Roundtable, specifically to Andy Epler's comment about Twitter. The gist of it was that he believes Twitter has come and gone because people are getting tired of hearing celebrities talk about themselves and everyone else talk about themselves. He seems to think that Twitter is only a vehicle for announcing that you're making yourself a tuna sandwich for lunch, or you're on the toilet right now, or crap like that. Well, I get this a lot. I hear this a lot from people who usually are brand new to Twitter and don't really understand what it can do. I've been involved with social media for a while now, and this kind of criticism tends to come from people who are using the system the wrong way. It's usually someone criticizing their own use of the system rather than looking for a way to actually make it work. Now, I don't know Mr. Epler, and I haven't been to AndyEpler.com yet. I'll probably do that after I hang up here. But I just wanted to comment on this. Twitter, like any other new media service, is a communications tool. And like all communications tools, be it your mailing list, your blog, your website, or just talking to people, if all you're doing is talking about yourself, not many people are going to be interested in you. I use Twitter and my blog and Facebook and anywhere else that my fans are congregating to listen to my fans. Basically, I use Twitter as another means of giving my fans a way to communicate with me. Now, of course, I Twitter what I'm doing and that sort of thing because, hey, it's there, but it's another vehicle for making that connection with the people that are buying my music, and that's the important thing. I'm not just talking about myself on Twitter. I am frequently conversing back and forth with people, and I'm looking to see what they're doing, and that's what's really important. So hopefully Mr. Epler can find a way to use this tool to his advantage because, hey, there's millions of people on Twitter, and why would you turn down a marketplace of people that large? Just my thoughts, and as usual, I'm probably wrong, so feel free to tell me so over at MatthewEbel.com or MatthewEbel.net. I appreciate it, and you guys keep doing what you're doing. Thanks a lot.
I think we got a little feud starting here over the podcast phone line. Now, I knew that some people would probably comment on Andy's comment, but I know you identify with Andy.
Yeah, I do, but that being said, I just tweeted today, I think for the first time in, I don't know, months maybe.
How'd it feel?
A little pointless.
But do you ever see people on Twitter talking about your shows or your music or your albums?
I have, but
don't you get a little thrill?
Yeah. Well, I haven't played a show in like 6 months though, so maybe that's why
He's been on a hiatus.
Yeah.
I mean, when that happens, it's, kind of like Matthew was saying, is that like that's a great time to just jump in and be like, "Thanks, man," and they're like, "Whoa." Like, the guy, he found me on Twitter and said hi, and I was talking about him.
Yeah. I think when I was more active on Twitter, I would, have my name in a search on TweetDeck, and it was exciting to see it pop up, and then friend the person. But
yeah, there are other things in life besides Twitter. It's true.
That is true. And the first caller cracked me up when he said that his drummer couldn't play anyway. But yes,
poor drummers.
Tracks are always an option. I either going to have a blog post about it on the DIY Musician blog, if you don't know that we have a blog at DIYmusician.cdbaby.com. And I thought about writing a blog post there about what's crossing the line as far as using technology live, as far as or maybe a roundtable discussion about that.
I think that's very genre dependent too. I
Yeah.
feel like hip hop, it's totally fine. Like to just have a guy up there with a mic and an iPod. Rock, not so much.
No. Well, we got some more calls, so let's get into it.
Hey, what's up? This is Johnny from Brooklyn, New York. I was listening to your last podcast, and you're talking about the iTunes LP and how it is closed off to independent artists, and you were talking about how a lot of the information can easily be, posted on your own website or your own MySpace, etc. It almost seems like you were kind of discouraging it a bit, and I can understand that CD Baby doesn't offer that service yet because Apple has its doors closed. However, I think it's important that the independent artist community kind of unite and open that door, because let's not forget, iTunes is one of the largest music retailers. And having something like an iTunes LP and a nice description with photos and web links in the iTunes store, which right now independent artists can't do, it's the difference between, for example, putting a flyer for your band on the wall of a record store versus having a big display for your record, that kind of adds more credibility and more information and really gives the sale more value. So those are just my thoughts as an independent artist. I'd love to have the opportunity to increase the appearance of value in the iTunes store. And I would love for CD Baby to do it because CD Baby rocks. So thanks again for the podcast. It's awesome. Johnny from Brooklyn, New York, prospectmusic.com.
You guys have some severe nerve, you know that. I was getting very familiar with the name of Robert, and now you've changed it to Bolton. I would appreciate it if you would change it back to Robert, as it seems more consistent with the message you guys are portraying as a DIY musician podcast.
So thanks for this.
Wow.
I don't know if you guys could hear when I played it for you in the room, but there's like this crazy little guitar thing going in the background. I just pictured like this guy totally like smoking out in a room somewhere listening to albums from the 70s.
Oh my God. I got to watch my back.
That's right.
Do we know who that was?
I don't know.
Wow.
They didn't say.
Well,
It was me.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
You couldn't make your voice sound like that.
I could if I tried.
No, you would start laughing halfway through.
well, if anybody else is disappointed by me going by Bolton, like I could, if we get enough calls, I might just switch it back.
You're
We'll
going to
see.
leave your identity and who you are as a person in the hands of the masses.
The podcast was great. They just never survived that whole Bolton Robert controversy.
That's when they really jumped the shark.
Yeah, that's right. But the caller before that, Johnny, I don't think that I would say that I would discourage iTunes LP. The rumor was that it cost about $10,000 to do. Apple kind of denies it, but it's probably a hefty price tag. And that being said, I would say it's not worth an independent artist to spend whatever production fee, because basically iTunes they're not just posting your album, they are, building in a website into the iTunes store.
Right.
And so if that's the case, for now, even if it was open to the independent artist, that price, that money you're going to spend could be better used elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that's all I was saying. With the content that is made available, it's not crucial that you have it there because you can make it other places.
I mean, I think it's a cool feature. I just think that it's, as far as indie artists goes, it's not going to make a huge wave anytime soon. And it's probably not going to make a huge wave as far as major artists are concerned.
And his example of it being like having a flyer on the wall of a record store or a nice big poster doesn't really work because people aren't walking around browsing in iTunes and coming through albums. Like, they're not looking at a wall of flyers. They're just looking at specific albums.
And similar to that, though, is that those end caps, or whatever you want to call them, are usually paid for, are they not, by the distributor?
Yeah.
So it's similar to the iTunes thing where you got to pay for this LP feature. You have to pay for the end cap.
But that doesn't necessarily get you featured, though. Someone still has to get to your album page, unless they, right now I haven't looked recently, but they may have an LP section. They probably do where you can see them. But
no, you can't get this content until you buy the album.
Correct.
See, I think it should be the other way around. You should get the content and then go, whoa, now I want to buy the album.
Well, see, it was a thing to add some more exclusive content to encourage.
It's bundling.
Sales.
It's bundling. It's not a horrible idea.
But we also have an email about the topic. Monty, who has contributed many times, he wrote about the iTunes LP. Yes, you can get everything from the iTunes LP from the artist's website. However, websites change typically as a new album comes out, leaving the old content unorganized, lost in cyberspace. One thing I really like about the LP format is it locks in the content, photos, video, lyrics, etc. with the album. And that was a good point.
That is a good point.
I think that was the best point out of anything, because then, websites do change. And, I've seen bands have a really cool website and liked what they did, and then they change it, and you're like, oh, this new website kind of stinks. And it doesn't go with the new album anymore.
I forget who it was. It Derek that had this advice? Somewhere I heard that someone was recommending basically for every album you have your own website with lyrics and essays about recording it or whatever you want to put on there, the tunes. And then every time you release a new album, you have a completely new URL with new content for that album, and they're all linked to from your sort of main artist website.
Working over at Host Baby, a lot of artists do that. Yeah. They buy the URL for the album, they put the content up there, and then they, link back to their home site.
Huh. So that's a good idea. It could get expensive if you've got 20 albums, but but yeah, so those were some good thoughts. And so thanks for all the feedback and the calls and the crazy person that's now after Bolton over there.
I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm carrying a knife.
But yeah, if you'd like to call our listener line, the number is 206-426-5683. And you can email us at info@cdbabypodcast.com. And there's also, if you forget the number, it's on the podcast website as well.
You made it through this episode without falling asleep.
You did. Now you can go fall asleep.
Now hopefully our audience will make it through.
You've been listening to the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast, broadcasting from Portland, Oregon, USA.